What is going on, Bucs fans? We are back here at the Pirate Parlay podcast here on the Sick Podcast Network. I'm your host, JC Allen, and as always, we are going behind enemy lines here on this episode. We're going to take a deep, in-depth preview of this Carolina Panthers team led by Dave Canales, former Buccaneers offensive coordinator, doing things over there. They've had a couple good games in a row, pulled up 2 upsets and took Kansas City Chiefs to the wire. So once thought of meager Panthers now present a real problem, and we'll get into what kind of problems they present with our special guest here. Happy Thanksgiving to all of you guys. I know this is going to air the day after, but I hope you had a great Thanksgiving with family, friends, and thankful for a lot of things this year. So we're going to get into everything about the Carolina Panthers and more right after the break.
Turn up your volume. Because you're about to listen to The Sick Podcast. Pirate Parlay.
Battle intercepted, picked off in the end zone. Bucs are going to beat the Chiefs. We're the champions of the world.
The sickest Tampa Bay Buccaneers podcast. It's going to be sick.
Back here on the other side, we're going to jump right into it. We've got Mike Kaye. He's a beat writer for the Carolina Panthers. At the Charlotte Observer, covering the team up close and personal, boots on the ground. So we'll get a deep insight on what this team has been up to. Let's start with the big thing there. A couple former Buccaneers on that coaching staff. Dave Canales, we loved him down here. His infectious personality, really listening to him talk in a press conference. You could listen to him, and there's nothing going wrong. Everything's going right. He just knows how to speak to people. You guys got Brad Idzik at offensive coordinator. You also took Harold Goodwin, Coach Goody, and Joe Gilbert over there on the offensive line. How has Dave Canales and those former Buccaneers kind of shifted the culture in the Panthers locker room?
Well, I think when you've gone through what they went through last year, anything is going up, right? And so I think the bar was set very low. That said, there were some initial growing pains. Obviously, they benched Bryce Young in week 3. That led to some, confusion in the locker room. It led to some folks wondering whether Andy Dalton was going to take the baton and just run with it. That didn't happen. They got off to a 1-2 start and then proceeded to go on a 5-game losing streak. And then as it happened, Andy Dalton got into a car accident. Bryce Young's back in the lineup. He wasn't very good against Denver, but over the last 3 games, really the last month, the month of November has been very good to Bryce Young. It's been very good to Dave Canales. And, really, this team is actually competing. And they're not just competing, they're staying in games late. Like, they were tied with the Chiefs until the buzzer rang, on Sunday. That's pretty wild. And that on paper, that game should have been a blowout. I think when you talk about Joe Gilbert and you talk about Goody, those guys have been invaluable because the offensive line has just been terrific. Last year, there was like a turnstile at guard due to poor performance and injury. They've had injuries at center. They've had injuries at left tackle. That's kind of created a turnstile at center. They have a really talented assistant offensive line coach, Kaye, who is just like doing an excellent job at center. But the way the Goody and Joe operate in that separate position group arrangement has really worked out for Ike Ekwonu. He's improved. Taylor Moton's been his steady presence, but the 2 guards that they paid have really benefited from Goody's tutelage, and I think they're in really good shape offensively.
Yeah, that's Robert Hunt and Damian Lewis, who they signed the mega deals. I always loved listening to them coach at practice, especially Goody. He's just like a throwback old school coach. I do miss hearing them over at practice. But you talked about the offense and everything like that. In a better shape now the last couple of games, but you look at the stats, they're still struggling in a ton of areas. Total offense, they're 31st in the league, only 285 yards per game. Passing offense, they're 31st in the league, 177 yards per game. Rushing is a little bit better, 24th, 107. Scoring is obviously not that great. They're not getting a lot of points, 29th, 17 points per game. Third down is struggling as well, 27, 33% 0.8% of the time they're converting. But you look at the numbers, and then out of nowhere, red zone offense. Their red zone offense is top 10, 58.1% of the time. They're converting to a touchdown when they get into the red zone. They're struggling to get there, but they're converting to get there. What's going on with this offense as far as their ability to get into the red zone and being so efficient at it?
Well, this past game was actually kind of rough for them. If they would have been as efficient in the red zone, they probably would have beat the Chiefs. They were two of 6 in the red zone. They settled for chip shot field goals on 4 trips. But I think the thought process is Dave Canales is so committed to the run. They've also really been good at getting the ball to Xavier Legette, the first-round pick. He's a great jump ball catcher. And, they have some guys who have done a really good job against zone, especially in smaller spaces. So I think it's a matter of having the unique talents that are fit for the red zone, but also having the identity of, hey, look, we're going to rely on this run game. And Chuba Hubbard has been excellent. Chuba Hubbard should be a Pro Bowler. Like, there's no question in my mind. He is, if the Bucs had the type of running success that they did, like running success that the Panthers are having this year that they did last year, I think Dave Canales probably is on a lot more radars than just the Panthers. And so I think Chuba Hubbard's really become the face of their franchise this season, with Derek Brown getting injured and Bryce Young being in and out of the lineup. And so I think as Chuba Hubbard goes, the Panthers go. And so I think that's something Dave Canales has really honed in on.
Let's talk about some of these offensive guys. You mentioned Legette, you mentioned Young, you mentioned Chuba. Let's start with Chuba because you got a big deal extension during the season. He's performing extremely well for this team right now. As you mentioned, probably Pro Bowl consideration with what he's done with the numbers he's putting up. Came in, he's got 876 yards, 7 touchdowns, came in as kind of like maybe an afterthought, I think, just a kind of maybe a rotational piece. And he's took control of that backfield, which is kind of funny at the timing of it when you invest a 2nd-round pick in Jonathan Brooks, who I believe just made his season debut last week, if I'm not mistaken. But talk to me about that. Miles Sanders, obviously they signed last year as their big guy, but he's on injured reserve and just kind of fell apart after leaving the Eagles. Let's talk about that running game. We know Dave loves to run it, especially sometimes maddening on first down, spamming the first down runs. But let's talk about that running game and what it's done for this offense, Chuba Hubbard in particularly, and what the Bucs can expect to see out of him and what they're doing with Jonathan Brooks. They're sprinkling him in as well.
Well, despite popular belief, this has always been the Chuba show. They were gonna run him into the ground one way or another. It just turned out that he was extremely successful and worthy of a contract, right? He was entering the final year of his deal. Smart teams take advantage of that, and they stack up on touches and runs. And they've got a kid coming off of an ACL injury who they really, really like. They didn't have to rush back because Chuba Hubbard is a wagon. They've been using him on early downs. He's actually improved as a pass catcher. He did have 2 drops against the Chiefs, which was a problem early on in his career. Brooks got 2 carries for 7 yards. I mean, look, Miles Sanders, before he got injured in Munich, was averaging 19 snaps and 6 total touches per game. That's about what you can expect from Jonathan Brooks moving forward. If he does kind of elevate his stance. They've been a 2-back system the entire year. Raheem Blackshear, their perennial number 3 running back, has not touched the ball on offense. This is the Chuba train. As Chuba goes, they're going to go. He's going to be heavily involved in every drive. This isn't one of those things where Chuba will come out for one series and Brooks or Sanders will come in for the other. This is about Chuba Hubbard. He is their be-all, end-all. And so really, I mean, the Chiefs came into the game allowing 85.3 yards per game. Chuba hit 85 rushing yards. That's, he's a guy who's going to go for your average. And I think, Dave's going to rely on him heavily in this game, especially when you look at, I mean, I'm sure we'll talk about it later, but when you look at what the Bucs defense has done this year. And so, they want to help Bryce Young. They also want to get behind Robert Hunt, who they paid $100 million to. They really like Cade Mays, who's come in. He's their 3rd starting center, and he was on the Giants practice squad roughly a month and a half ago. but he has played extremely well. And look, Ike Ekwonu gets his lumps, but he's an incredible run blocking tackle. And so they're just kind of playing to their strengths. They're limited strengths, but they're playing to them. And I think this running game is really what's going to be the bread and butter for them facing the Bucs.
Yeah, they're gonna, they're gonna run the ball with David at the helm, but you can't just run the ball. You got to pass the ball as well. Mentioned his name earlier, Xavier Legette. They got Adam Thielen over there as well. Dave Moore, former Buck, and Jalen Coker, who's had some success this season as well. Tight ends. It was a Jatavion Sanders who just went down with an injury.
Yeah, he suffered a neck injury. I don't expect him to play this week.
Yeah, but they still got Tommy Tremble, former quarterback from Florida, Felipe Franks on the roster. Just talk about the pass catchers, what their ability. I mean, Xavier Legette, besides having an amazing accent, I would love to talk to him all the time. He's actually putting up some really solid numbers: 33 receptions, 340 yards, 4 touchdowns, averaging 10 yards per catch. He looks like the guy that everyone thought he'd be. What have you seen on these pass catches? Where do they thrive? Is it more of those short and get some yak? Is it more the attacking zone, attacking man? What have you seen out of these wide receivers, and where do they thrive best?
Well, unfortunately, losing Sanders is going to be a big problem for them because he's like 20 yards short of the rookie record for tight end receiving yards for this franchise. He's already produced more tight end yardage than any tight end since Greg Olsen in 2019. Granted, that tells you kind of more about the state of the tight end position for the Panthers over the last 5 years than anything. And he's terrific at getting free in zone. Adam Thielen just came back with a 3-catch, 57-yard performance against the Chiefs. He's kind of Rice's safety net, the way most tight ends would be. He's going to work the slot. Jalen Coker was battling a quad injury. He's kind of 50-50 on whether he'll play this week, it seems. He's a guy who they like at the Z position. David Moore filled in for him on Sunday and played probably the best game of his career. Had 81 yards and a touchdown off 6 catches. And then, look, Legette, like you said, I think he's come as advertised. He's a guy who is not a very refined route runner. He has a lot of quirks. His stride is the most unique I've ever seen. It might be more unique than his accent. He runs like he's on a horse.
Fitting.
He both gallops and also mounts while it's the weirdest stride you've ever seen, but he's deceptively quick. He's been great in the red zone. He struggled with drops quite a bit. He had 2 very, very bad drops against the Chiefs. So did Tommy Tremble. Also had a pretty ridiculous drop as well. They're not in great shape at tight end. Jordan Matthews, I'm guessing, is going to be promoted from the practice squad, the former receiver turned tight end. He hasn't caught a meaningful pass since 2019. So
that's a wide receiver too, I believe.
Yeah. So it's not looking great. But I mean, if Coker and Sanders can't play, they're really shorthanded. That said, Bryce Young has really stepped up, and I'm sure that's the next stop on this express. But
jump right into it.
Yeah, I mean, well, from a receiver standpoint, I think Thielen being healthy does help them. They're going to rely on him quite a bit.
Right. As far as Bryce Young, you talked about it, benched earlier in the season. Andy Dalton comes in. He gets into a car wreck. Bryce Young comes in. Bryce probably played, I think, his best game of his career against the Chiefs. Just kind of looking at what he was able to do. I tuned in the game late, obviously, so I didn't get to see the whole thing. But you kind of box score watch, and then you kind of brush up on what everyone's saying about it. Just talk about Bryce Young. What did that benching do for him? How has he responded after? How has the team responded after that? And what is he back on track, do you think, or is there still some ways to go?
Well, you know this from covering Dave. Dave's a very convicted guy. And the one thing he was not convicted on basically throughout the regular season was Bryce Young. So for 5 weeks, he said Andy Dalton gives them the best chance to win, even amid a 4-game losing streak. And then after that, it was a week-to-week evaluation, a week-to-week evaluation, a week-to-week evaluation. And his performance against the Chiefs right after, we asked if he was going to be the starter moving forward, and Dave Canales was like, absolutely. He said that he's making statements for him. I think that he has done much better huddle work. As we know, at quarterback, it's just as much about what you do before the snap as you do, after the snap. And so I think he's getting out play calls a lot faster. I think his procedural work is getting a lot better. I think he's processing a lot better at the line of scrimmage. I think he's just confident. During the Frank Reich era, it seemed like he could only throw 8 yards in front of him, which if you watched his tape in college, he was dynamic. The thing is there were a lot of teams that liked him as the top quarterback in the draft for a reason, because he could create and he could process and he could move. And it just seemed like everything was stunted last year and a bit in those first 2 weeks of the season for Canales. And it seems like that step back and that challenging to be the guy, Bryce hadn't been through a lot of football adversity. I mean, yeah, they went 2-15 last year. And yeah, he was the backup to Mac Jones as a freshman. That's not adversity. I mean, Jalen Hurts is the only freshman to really start for that team and have success under Saban. So I think there's a lot to be learned from some, just because you're not an athlete, you can still be a competitor, right? And I'm not saying that about Bryce Young. I'm saying for the people at home, for you and me, we have various competitions in our professional life, probably in our personal life. And I think the greatest thing you can tell a competitor is no, because their number one instinct is to push back. And I think Bryce Young showed that he took that from behind the scenes and developed. And I think, there's a lot of work to go. I mean, he's not perfect. Obviously he's still the short quarterback that, that could. Well, he's got to prove that at least. And I think the offensive line improving has really helped him. Yeah. I think having big targets like Leggett and Coker is helpful. I think Sanders has been a godsend for him, which is a shame because now he's probably out for a bit. And then, I think having Thielen back in there is going to be very helpful. So I do think he's ascending. Do I think he is a lock to be the quarterback of the future? Absolutely not. But I do think he's getting to where they thought he could be potentially in year 2.
Yeah, I mean, everyone gets spoiled. The whole Joe Burrow, 2 years later, they're in the Super Bowl. You look at what CJ Stroud did last year. Sometimes the Panthers were a bad team. They've been a bad team. They need time to rebuild the team. They started that with the offensive line this season. They started with some skill positions at wide receiver, running back, and tight end this season. I believe next draft will probably heavily focus on the defense, cornerback, getting some help on that side of the ball. But things take time. Not every quarterback develops as quick. So, I like Bryce Young. I think that there's potential there. You can't change his height. You could never change Bryce Young's height. Correct. But as you mentioned, dynamic in college. And you saw some of that dynamicism, whatever, you guys know what I'm saying, come back, I think last week and hopefully not this week, but continuing to go. I always thought the offense with Dave Canales is going to be something that goes steadily up. It's not going to flip it around. They're just not the playmakers there. He's not coming to a situation where he has Mike Evans and Chris Godwin, Rashad White, and, we're in an offensive line where your real project is reclaiming Baker Mayfield. He's a short king quarterback whisperer for a reason, and I think he'll get Bryce eventually on the right path. They just need some more talent around them, and hopefully they can get that for him. We're going to jump over to the defense side of the ball. But before we do that, I want to give a huge shout out to our sponsors over at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers Cruise. Guys, I don't have to tell you this because you already know, but get your tickets now. You've got about a week and a half left. Tickets close at December 11th. It's going to be so much fun there. March 7th to the 10th out of Fort Lauderdale to Key West, the Bimini, Bahamas, and back. There's so many good players that are going to be on this. As you can see, Jordan Whitehead, Brad Johnson, Trey Palmer, but so many more. Mike Allstott, Derek Brooks, Tristan Wirfs, Luke Gedeke, Graham Barton, Kalaja Cansey, Yaya Diaby, Zion McCollum, Rashad White. The list goes on and on and on about all these players. Jimmy Giles, Robert Batman Woods. So many guys are going to be there. So much fun on this thing. I went there last year. Can't wait to go back this year. There's a sail away party to kick everything off with trivia contests, bingo, cocktail parties, where you get to interact with these guys one-on-one. You're not rushed through like an autograph line or a herd of cows. You can just see them kind of hanging out. Some of the guys were playing football on the upper deck with some of the kids too. So it's so much fun. There's a thrilling water volleyball competition between the players and then the crew. theme parties that keep the fun going all night long. Don't miss this awesome opportunity to create lasting memories with your family, fellow Bucs fans from all around the country, and of course your favorite players. Check out Tampa Bay Buccaneers Cruise.com. Again, December 11th is the final day. Christmas is right around the corner. Black Friday is coming up. You're already allocating those funds anywhere. Allocate them towards Tampa Bay Bucs Cruise. Tell them I sent you. It's going to be a blast. You won't want to miss it. All right, let's jump into this defense. It took a big hit early on with Derek Brown going down. There's no way you can replace him. But you look at some of the rankings for the defense this season, and we'll just go through. They're still not doing great. Total defense, they're allowing 387 yards per game, which is 30th in the league. Pass defense has improved a bit, but it's still not great at 24th in the league, 226 yards per game they're allowing. The run defense is the worst in the league, allowing over 160 yards per game, which must have the Buccaneers licking their chops when they're looking at putting this game plan together. Their scoring defense has been awful. They've allowed the most points per game, averaging 30 points to their opponents. Their red zone defense, again, not the worst, but certainly not the best at 23%. They're allowing 63.8% of the time. They're allowing conversions to points. And then their third down defense is the worst in the league. They're not getting off the field 49.3% of the time. They're allowing teams to convert. Bucs are number 2 in the league in converting on offense, and number 2 in the league in red zone. Seems like a really uphill battle for this Carolina Panthers on Sunday. They've showed a lot of grit and a lot of heart, I think, especially over the last 3 games. And those are season totals. They're not indicative of what's been going on against the Giants, against the Saints, and against the Chiefs. They allowed 30 points, but they held the Saints to just 22 and the Giants to 17. But again, playing better. What have you seen out of this Panthers defense? Let's just call it the last 3 weeks, because that's led you to believe that there's improvement on the schedule.
Well, I think for one, DJ Wadham was out on PUP with a quad injury for the first, 9 games of the season. And then like a rocket against the Giants, he was a game wrecker. Like if you rewatch that first half, he sets the tone in every which way. It seemed like he was going to get home for a sack like several times, just barely missed. And then clobbered Daniel Jones in the second quarter. He set the tone. And then this past game, he forced basically 3 of the 5 sacks they got on Mahomes. This guy has come out of a rocket. You don't know what you got till it's gone. And him missing that first 9 games of the season, man, he's playing like he wants to get all 17 games into this, 8-game stretch or whatever it is. But like he's been a game changer for them. That's why the passing game has improved. Mike Jackson's kind of like a replacement level starting corner. Then again, they got him for their 7th round pick, Michael Barrett, who didn't even make the Seahawks roster, like right in training camp. I think J.C. Horn's been terrific. The refs got a little flag happy with him last game, and DeAndre Hopkins kind of had his way with him. But something you guys should know is that J.C. Horn leads the league at the cornerback position in run stops. He's, you guys know him as this guy who's been fragile and who's been out of the lineup quite a bit. He's added muscle. He's played really well against the run. And frankly, the Dave Canales audition game, that last game of the season last year, the 9-0 win for the Bucs, was maybe the best game I've ever seen J.C. Horn play. I think he had 5 tackles, and I want to say he had like 3 or 4 pass breakups. Did a really nice job against Mike Evans. So I think they feel good about that there. Inside linebacker, they're kind of up and down. Josie Jules returned from injury and made some really crazy turnover plays, but I don't know that he is particularly great on a play-to-play basis. Trevin Walsh, the 3rd-round rookie, has got some great range, but he's kind of hit or miss. I think when you look at the rest of the edge group, Jadeveon Clowney has obviously played much better with another pass rusher on the other side. A'Shaun Robinson started to come on. Shy Tuttle you can run at all day and produce. Listen, the key for the Bucs in this game is to just run the ball. I know like they're going to be tempted to pass because Liam Cohen's brilliant, but and Baker is Baker, but like run the ball because you can get a lot of success out of that. They just the past 2 years under Evero, they just have not figured out how to stop the run. They're terrible at tackling outside of basically J.C. Horn and DJ Wadham. It's been kind of a rough go there, and you see it in the stats. They play the Eagles next week, and I'm almost positive Saquon's going to have another 200-yard rushing performance. So that's been tough. I think they're getting better late in games. Like situationally, I think they're playing much better defensively. They got 2 key stops against the Chiefs, and then Patrick Mahomes. But I think, sorry if you're hearing my kids run amok.
My cat just made it up appearance. It's vacation week, bro.
You're but yeah, I mean, I think the key for any offense against this team is running the ball. Unfortunately, like the Chiefs and the Saints, right? Like they had success on the ground. They just got away from it for whatever reason, and that's what kept the Panthers in the game. But like really, if you run the ball 10 times, like if your opening script is 8 runs and 2 passes, you're doing it right. Like especially if you're a defensive-minded head coach like Todd Bowles, who I have a ton of respect for. I think he is vastly underrated as a head coach. Right. And it's good to see him get a great shot with, I mean, the Bucs over the last few years. But Liam Cohen is obviously brilliant. He's going to work in passes. It's going to happen. And it's just going to be like whether J.C. Horn can travel with the future Hall of Famer and see if he can kind of shut him down. He was excellent against him their last matchup. We'll see what they do this year.
Do you expect Horn to travel with him?
So he moved a lot with Hopkins. That's not a natural Evero thing. They typically like for the guys to play side so they can settle in, especially because Mike Jackson is sorry, my kid's iPad's doing something weird.
That's cool.
But they typically like to play sides because they are such a shell-heavy defense. But, I mean, it's Mike Evans. Like, I mean, if you were going to have a guy travel, this would be the week, right?
Right. I'm just thinking, too, because, they're trying to get Mike Evans his 1,000 yards. He needs 99 yards per game. If they can get some matchups on him. Hi, Cat. They can get some matchups on him. With Mike Jackson, who's playing slot for you guys right now? Is it Jamie Robinson?
Well, so the nickel for the Panthers right now is Dane Jackson.
Okay.
To say he was a liability against the Chiefs would be a vast understatement. He's a pretty decent tackler, but had a tough tackling performance. He was terrible in coverage. Kaye should have a pretty big game. They have really struggled to defend crossers, especially from tight ends. From their perspective, like Kaye should really be able to do some damage across the middle. I think they'll expect that. I think Cade's having a pretty good year based on what I've seen. And so they're going to have to plan accordingly.
Selfishly, I want to ask about Jamie Robinson because I really liked him coming out of college. How has he been? Is he into the mix at all? Or is there still what's he been like?
Well, he's been mostly a special teamer, but he's been inactive for quite a few games. He was inactive in Munich. I don't know. The tough thing with Jamie is Jamie's undersized. He's got great energy, great intangibles. I just think it's tough to put him in coverage. It's tough to, I don't think, what he was good at in college was, making stops and being aggressive and blitzing, but his size is just not up to par in the NFL, and it's just been difficult. He's contributed on special teams, though.
All right. Well, we'll jump over to, now that we've talked defense, we'll jump over into keys to the game, matchups to watch as well. And then we'll get our score predictions. Before that, we do want to shout out to one of our sponsors here, Mosley Heating and Air. When Florida heat hits hard, trust Mosley Heating and Air to keep you cool and comfortable. With over 25 years of experience, their family-owned business knows what it takes to keep your home's HVAC system running smoothly. Need a repair, new system, or maintenance plan? Now's the time to do it while we're in this cold front. They've got you covered. Call Mosley Heating and Air today at 813-230-3742 or visit mosleyheatingandair.com. Mosley Heating and Air, where comfort meets reliability. So let's kind of get into this matchup here that we have. The Panthers on offense. If they want any chance to win this game, what do they need to do consistently to exploit this Bucs defense?
I mean, they need a run. Like, that should be the strategy for both teams here. I think Chuba is basically the straw that stirs the drink. I think they're going to have to work in a lot of quick hitters. They're going to have to take their shots when they can. I actually feel pretty good about the Panthers heading into this game. I know that sounds weird, but like, it just kind of feels like the vibes and everything are up. And if they were going to steal a game, this one feels like one they could after the Bucs breeze through the Giants. So, look, the key for them is to keep the score under 23 points for the Bucs. And if they can do that, I think they've got a pretty good shot of winning this one.
You know, I feel that too. I feel if the Panthers are going to win one, it's going to be the one in Carolina. Davy's going to have some tricks up his sleeve for them. He knows the offense, the system, the defensive system really well. He knows the playmakers on offense. He can give that insight to EJ and try to how to shut it down. You know, I feel like if they're going to steal a game, this is the one they're going to do. I don't think it's going to be the Week 17 game. I think it's this one if they're going to steal one. On that note, the Bucs are going to have success and can win this game if they do what on offense? I
mean, be themselves. Like, that's what it is. Like, if they're not rattled by what's going on in the game, like, they should be heavily favored.
Switch over to the defensive side. If the Panthers win this game, they did what on defense?
They held the Bucs within 23 points.
Yeah, stop the run. Any?
I mean, they've got to be able to stop the run. I just don't see that happening. But I do think that if J.C. Horn becomes J.C. Horn against Mike Evans and has a good day, I think that would go a long way towards slowing stuff down.
And then flip side, Bucs defense. What do they do? What do they need to do to get this W on Sunday?
Create turnovers. I mean, that's really the key. I mean, Bryce has done a really good job of protecting the ball as of late, but he is prone to mistakes. And if you can rattle him, and get to him a couple of times, he'll throw the ball away.
Key matchups to watch as far as where you think the Panthers might have an advantage. First on offense, and then a matchup on defense where they might have an advantage, or maybe can exploit something with one of their players against a certain matchup, certain look.
I think Chuba Hubbard against the front seven, obviously, just the guard play and, Chuba is just kind of where they're going to go. Like I said, I can't hammer it home enough how much of a strength that is for them. Defensively, I mean, I guess you could say Clowney and Wadham, but you don't feel pretty comfortable again, about that. I mean, the Bucs aren't a terrible offensive line, but I mean, they're going to do some unique stuff with Wadham, I would expect. And then for the Panthers, they should be worried about what matchup as far as the Bucs on offense and defense. I mean, the Bucs backfield against this front seven is a pretty obvious one. I think Cade Otton against their safety group is rough. I think it's going to be tough within the hash marks for them. And then defensively, who are you most worried about defensively that could cause problems for this team? Where position, what player, what group, whatever. I mean, I think the defensive front's going to be tough. This is going to be a tough matchup from a just in the trenches sort of thing. We saw Chris Jones have a lot of success against Robert Hunt. It was like the first guy that made him look human all year. And I think the Bucs have the possibility, like if Chuba can't get past the first, phase of the defense, it's going to be a long afternoon. Yeah, sounds like this is going to be a battle in the trenches, and with Vita Vea, Kalijah Cansey up against that interior of the offensive line. Hopefully the Bucs can get some pressure at the edges. They've struggled to do so far as of late. We'll see if that can change this week against Icky and Moton. But before we get you out of here, we're going to do our score predictions. Our score predictions are brought to you by FanGo Tickets. Tired of getting blitzed by big ticketing companies? Turn to FanGo for your exclusively locally owned and operated Tampa Bay ticketing partner that offers fans like you full transparency. They're giving you the price of the ticket, the fees, and what they're making. Nothing hidden. So definitely take a look at FanGo Tickets. They prioritize fair pricing with no hidden fees
so that Tampa fans can enjoy events without unexpected costs. Visit fangotickets.com for unbeatable prices, personalized seat selection, and local partnerships that will take your game day to the next level. They're starting to roll out this new program where you can get your tickets and everything else included, your parking, your hotels will be eventually, but also reservations at restaurants where you can go there pregame. Everything's set up. You don't need to wait around for a table, for a spot at the bar. Everything's already set up for you. So check out fangotickets.com. Mike, give me a score prediction. What do you think is going to happen this week?
Well, after talking this out with you, I feel less confident about this, but I was going to go 24-23 Panthers. I just feel like there's, you know what I mean? Like sometimes you just have a feeling about a game, and I just kind of, I feel like where they're in a very good place as a team, and I think Dave's going to want to win this one bad. So I'm going to go 24-23 Panthers.
I'm going to go a little bit higher than you. I got a little bit of a gap, but I do have them making it interesting. I've got 33-20 Buccaneers winning this game. That might change when my final score predictions come out when I write it. But as of right now, 33-20, I think the Bucs eclipse 30 points. They just did it against the Giants. I think this defense doesn't really present as many problems or any, the similar problems that the Giants did. Giants coming in with had the second most sacks in the league, and they held them to 0 and 6 pressures on the day. I think the Bucs offensive line plus Christian might be back. We'll do a good job moving these bodies and letting them get things going in the run game, which will open up everything in the passing game, which will open up the scoring. Mike, before I get you out of here, I want to say thank you very much. Happy Thanksgiving, even though Thanksgiving was yesterday when you're watching this. But go ahead, promote yourself. Where can they find your work? Where can they find everything that you're up to over at the Charlotte Observer?
Well, everybody can harass me when, JC turns out to be correct and I was wrong. At Mike_E_K on X. I'm also on Blue Sky at Mike K Football, Threads, Mike K Football. And then you can follow our great content on charlotteobserver.com. We also have a podcast, Processing Blue. So
awesome.
I
appreciate your time, man. It's going to be a fun matchup. These divisional ones always are. You never know what can happen. It's up your neck of the woods. You're going to make it down here for the follow-up?
Yeah, I'll be there.
Awesome. We'll get you back on for that matchup, and we'll have to link up at the game. Appreciate your time, and we'll definitely talk to you again soon, my man.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. There you guys have it. Another episode of Pyro Parlay Podcast, Behind Enemy Lines. Hope everyone had a happy Thanksgiving. You're probably out Black Friday shopping, or everything's not on the internet now. Black Friday deal started like 2 weeks ago. I took advantage of some of those. But I appreciate everyone for tuning in. Make sure you guys are liking, subscribing, turning on notifications. Should have mentioned that in the beginning of the pod when you guys had you hook. Everyone listening on Spotify, Apple, whatever podcast your list format, I appreciate all of you. Can't thank you guys enough for listening over there. I'm thankful. It's a week to be thankful to have this audience. You guys, thanks for some of the amazing guests we've had over the 2 years we've done this, year and a half we've done this. Appreciate all of you, every single one of you. Hope everything's going well in your life. I have an open DM on X. If you ever need to talk, ever have questions about football, feel free to shoot away. But yeah, thank you guys so much again for tuning into another episode of the Pirate Parlay Podcast here on the Sick Podcast Network. It's JC Allen. We're out of here. Peace.
And that's a wrap. Hope you don't miss us too much until next time. Follow the Sick Podcast Pirate Parlay on YouTube, Facebook, Google Play, and Apple Podcasts.